Welcome to Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. I'm Paula Eddy Wilcox, and today is the third episode with our wonderful guest who is talking about the pivotal moments that make them the leader they are today. I really hope you enjoy the episode. I can't wait to find out what's in store. Welcome to Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. I'm delighted to welcome back Tom Willis for his third and final episode. Delighted I didn't scare him off. He's back here for the third one. Thank you, Tom, and welcome back.
Absolutely, Paul. Absolutely. Thanks for having me back again. I didn't scare you either.
I've got broad shoulders, made of strong stuff, as they say. But no, absolutely not. You've shared some fascinating insights, to the work that you do, but your views and experience around leadership and how to create a fantastic culture for leadership and organizations really to thrive as they grow and move forwards. And this week, we've already looked at your leadership journey in your first episode. And last week we had that wonderful take on game and leadership and sort of shifting that our own mindset into moving from, perhaps more junior positions into our first leadership role, or even later on different leadership roles, because it can take a while for this stuff to sink in and reality to set in and us to notice that we need that kind of mindset shift to realize what we need to be thinking about and playing a totally different game when we sort of finally fit into those leadership shoes, as it were. So it's been fascinating so far.
Yes, it's like I said, it's like a topic that has no end to its depth. You could talk about this for days and weeks. In fact, we typically do when we engage with a client. We start with a 5-month process because it takes time. It takes time to adopt new behaviors and new mindsets, because all of us have a tendency to want to fall back into our fur-lined ruts. That's what my business partner's dad used to call it. We all have this fur-lined rut that we're stuck in, but it's lined with fur, so it feels pretty good. And when we're trying to learn and grow, we've got to get out of that. We've got to face our fears and be willing to try and do different things. But inertia kicks in, and we can kind of revert to the mean, revert back to our old behaviors if we're not careful. And so it takes time to make progress on this. It doesn't need to take years, by the way. You can get a lot done in 2 or 3 months, but you do need to have a consistent and have a thoughtful approach to making it happen.
Yeah, you mentioned a great word there, Tom, consistency. I think, so many people or organizations even embark on this. I hear it a lot. Yeah, we want to bring in a coaching culture. This is great. We'll just train a couple of people as coaches and that'll be it. They'll just offer some coaching and it'll happen as if by magic overnight. And it does make me smile, and I'm happy to help educate that it takes a little bit more than that. And again, another endless topic we could chat about. But what I'd love to hear from you today in true Game of Leadership style is the pivotal moments really that helped you to arrive here chatting to me today, Tom, but also to leading you to write a book with your business colleague Brad, and those pivotal moments that make you the leader you are today. So go ahead.
Oh, there's so many of them. I was blessed to go to a really amazing high school and had some pretty remarkable experiences there, including a Kairos retreat that was life-changing. Going through college, had a lot of fun, in many ways kind of fell away from my faith. And that was a learning experience in many ways. There's a few that stand out though. One was after college, I worked for Intel during college. I did a co-op. And then after college, I worked for PricewaterhouseCoopers. And I was let go with a few thousand other people because of the .com explosion, the whole .com of the 2001 timeframe where, thousands of people were losing jobs, and it was really a challenging time. And it was really frustrating for me because I wasn't there for very long, and I didn't really feel like I had a chance to prove myself. And so I ended up going over, and I mentioned this in the first episode, going over to visit my best friend in Africa and helping him with a school over there and doing some teaching. And that moment, will always stand out to me because it was truly life-changing. It was this moment of, I've been seeking to be successful, and successful meant making more money for most of my life, and working hard to get good grades so I could get a good job so I could make a lot of money, to really shifting to how do I provide value to others? How do I be of service to others? And so I came back and started teaching in Detroit, and, to go from an engineer from University of Michigan to a teacher teaching English and Spanish and what else did I teach? I can't remember. Economics was quite life altering, as you can imagine, but it was hugely edifying and hugely gifting for me personally, and very, very rewarding. And so that's probably the moment that stands out to me, is that I wallowed in it for sure. I was upset. I was probably even depressed for a month or two. But I didn't stop moving. I didn't stop trying to grow. I didn't stop trying to pursue what was next. And I didn't stop believing in myself. And I think that's the real leadership lesson is, yes, there will absolutely be down moments in our lives. And it's what we do in those moments that matters the most. And just keep going, just keep pushing forward, even if you're not sure exactly where you're headed. Just keep those feet moving and keep that mind going. And I've found anyway that works.
Yeah, it's really incredible to hear you saying that, Tom, in terms of keep moving, keep the momentum going. You're not always sure necessarily where you're heading, but something will come in that feels right. And in your case, it was that opportunity that presented itself, and you chose to grab it with both hands and go to Africa to support your friend and start the teaching. And it's incredible how we have those strengths within us. And, we've mentioned this a couple of times over the last couple of episodes, to then something switches, suddenly we believe actually that we can do it. If you'd asked yourself 3 months prior to that, could I go and teach in Africa, English, Spanish and economics, you may well have said, don't be ridiculous, I can't do that. And here you are 3 months later doing absolutely that, embracing it. As you, what did you call it? A fur-lined trough or something, you said, in terms of stepping out of your fur-lined trough, step out of your comfort zone, feel the fear and do it anyway. We somehow find this strength within us to go ahead and grab those opportunities with both hands. How did that feel at the time? It just sounds incredible.
Yeah, it was, how did it feel at the time? I don't know is a good answer for me, because I was so sort of in a cloud in that point in my life that I just didn't know what I thought in many ways. Here I was in my early 20s. But I do remember just the absolute joy and the sheer sense of sort of contentment on these kids' faces that I was teaching, even though, in the worldly standard, they didn't have much materially. They just had this youthfulness and this joy and this contentment. And every day we'd walk back to where we lived, through a pretty tough area, if you will. Folks literally living, their floor was dirt, and they had whatever they could find to build a structure around them that they called their home. And it, was small, probably, I don't know, 15 feet by 15 feet, or 5 yards, or 5 meters by 5 meters, to translate for the Europeans. and yet they were just content. They were just very at peace with life and enjoying the simple things. Doesn't mean that they didn't have significant challenges. I don't mean to minimize that by any means, but it was a huge contrast for me that, you come back to the States. I'll never forget, I flew home through New York City, and one of the first billboards I saw after this really intense experience in Africa was in New York City. It said, "Stop and sell the roses." And I thought, well, here you go, right back into it. Talk about culture contrast. And in many ways, many folks have all the wealth in the world, but almost no contentment. And so it was just a great moment for me of, if you want to live a life that's worth living, I think it's about trying to be of service to others.
Yeah, that idea of being content is just so inviting to me in that, I remember when my daughter was, I don't know, how old was she? Maybe 5, because she'd probably got from school, "Mummy, are we ever going to be rich?" Because it's all about the material things, and I said to her, what do you mean? Lots of money and lots of a big car and I said, "Oh, okay." I said, "So don't you think we're rich now?" She said, "Well, no, Mummy, we're not." So I then proceeded to explain my idea of rich, which was nothing like the richness that she had seen in that moment at 5 years old. And that's not because we hadn't taught her the importance of family and happiness and contentment together, that togetherness brings. And we're very lucky that we were able to give that to her. But it's just that simplicity of it, isn't it, that you can so easily see contentment as something materialistic. And that billboard that you saw as you flew back into New York, it's like smack in the face, isn't it? As soon as you it's like awakening you from this lovely, delightful dream that you've had, where everything is much simpler, much more content, and waking you up with that bump, when you wake yourself up with a fright in your dream, all of a sudden, and you're like, oh, I just want to get back to that moment, that feeling that I had just then. And it's like you can see it here, but it's just out of reach in your peripheral vision.
Yeah. And I think as as leaders, especially, this is important. There's a lot of talk out there. There's some books on the topic of radical acceptance. To just be able to accept things as they are, whether you like it or not, is a tremendous leadership skill to have. And again, it's not easy, but the faster you can just accept things, and it's not just accept, it's actually radical acceptance, as we think about it, it's as if you chose it. It's as if you genuinely chose the circumstance. Because if you can take your mind to that place, it's amazing what you can then do with it, because now you've empowered yourself to say, okay, well, this happened. It's supposed to happen. Apparently I don't want it to happen, but if I pretend like I chose it, then what do I do now? And now you're much more quickly able to get into action. You could see it, at least I could see it here locally with a lot of the restaurants. Some restaurants weren't able to accept reality. They weren't able to accept COVID and the lockdowns and the shutdowns. And I get why, by the way, because it's, especially here, it's against everything in our American DNA of freedom, right? And so there was a resistance to just accept things as they are. But the restaurants that actually did amazingly well, and some of them are probably making way more money than they ever did, because they've doubled their business, because now they've got the restaurant business where people come and sit down, but they've also kept their carryout business alive. One restaurant in particular literally cut a hole in the wall right next to the kitchen so that they could serve sushi to people that pulled up and ordered to go. And so it starts with that, that radical acceptance, and then being able to move from there.
That's a great example, Tom, in terms of radical acceptance of the pandemic. I'll struggle to find anybody out there that I've ever spoken to that liked it. But for those that were able to embrace it, pivot in the moment, see the opportunity that presented, exactly like the restaurants you've talked about, the ones here, local to me, that were able to do the same, are the ones that are now going and thriving even more as a result than pre-pandemic. And it takes strength, vision, bravery, courage, again, lots of those things, belief that it's possible, lots of those things we've talked about over the last couple of weeks, and to make that possible, and to be able to pivot in the moment and take that opportunity.
Yeah, we had that for ourselves, right? We do in-person culture work, very human, very deep, very intense. Frankly, it can be intense. It's hugely valuable. It's hugely productive. The clients we work with talk about it being life-changing and profound and transformative, and it's a huge gift to be able to do this work. But at the beginning of the pandemic, we looked at each other as a team and said, "Uh-oh, we're in trouble. This is not good," because we're not doing any in-person work. At the time, we thought for maybe 3 or 4 weeks, right? Remember that period?
Yeah.
Finally, about 3 or 4 weeks in, we realized, oh, this isn't going anywhere, and we've got to stop whining about it and start getting into action. And what we realized is we just needed to be of service. We just needed to go back to what we do, which is helping leaders in whatever ways we could. And now, fast forward 3 years, it's been a huge gift because we started some new programs. We start using Zoom a lot more. We don't have to travel as much across the country to clients for a 2-hour meeting. We can do that on Zoom. We started a CEO group that convenes from people from across the various time zones once a month that we call the Interchange, which is a fantastic group of humble leaders that come together and talk and support each other once a month. We never would have started that without the pandemic. So in a way, we had to take our own medicine and really adopt that radical acceptance. And if you do, like in our case, it produced tremendous fruit.
Yeah, that idea of, that sort of, I forget the word you use now, but that mastermind of bringing together all those different CEOs, it's hugely supportive to have that peer-to-peer conversation, and to have somebody help facilitate that is, you're right, an absolute gift. And what a lovely development of the services that you've been able to offer as a result. And again, I've supported entrepreneurs to pivot from face-to-face to online, and all sorts of different leaders to looking at how they can move online in what they're delivering and servicing for others. Where there were so many people I came across, in networking at the start of the pandemic, that were just broken. My business is finished. Wait a minute, just take a step back, take a deep breath for a moment. That 4 weeks of almost grieving that you described. What can we do with this? How can we look at it differently? That reframe and that support in the community that came together and allowed people to look at it all very differently. And support each other to approach their business in a very different way. And I think whilst there was a lot of heartache, a lot of challenge globally from the pandemic, there have been a lot of gifts, I think, that have come from it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. If people have chosen to look at it that way, the more gifts that will come, right? And
Yeah.
if we've chosen to look at it like it's all bad, then it's probably going to produce mostly bad.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's almost that self-fulfilling prophecy, isn't it? And I don't say that lightly. I think, well, you've probably got the picture by now. I'm quite a positive person, Tom, so I tend to always try and look at the bright side. Every cloud has a silver lining, right? In my world, I try to see that. That doesn't mean I don't have a bad day or a bad week, or sometimes a bad few weeks. But I do try and see the opportunity in things, and love to try and support others, whether that's teams I'm working with or individuals, to be able to see those opportunities for themselves as well. And that lovely, helpful reframe of things, when they're describing things to you and you're saying, okay, that's interesting. What's making you look at it like that? And okay, how could you look at that differently? And then, like, what do you mean? Well, just have a think about that for a moment, And then, people are always hungry for you to give them an answer, but they always have the answer. More often than not, have the answer within themselves. And I love that. Oh, this idea of engagement. Then do tell us a little bit about your book, and culture of engagement, and when can we expect that on the shelves, Tom?
Yeah, great question. Our book publisher down in Austin, Texas, is working on the graphics and fixing all of our horrible grammar, and putting the book together and the cover design. And we're especially proud because just a couple of weeks ago, we got an endorsement from Ken Blanchard, which is just phenomenal. Here's this guy in his 80s and he's still being of service to others, being just generous as all can be. And so really excited about it. But the book, The Great Engagement, will be out later in 2023. If folks are interested in finding out when it comes out, you can just go to our website, phoenixperform.com/book. So phoenixperform.com/book. And you can sign up for a free reminder of when the book's going to come out. And we'll probably have a first day or first 2-day sale for the digital copy. So if you're interested, that's the best place to learn more about that.
Fantastic. And I think everyone will have got the idea by now, Tom, that you're full of leadership gems and ways to help support not only individuals, but a thriving team and organizational culture, which is really helpful, and definitely the way forwards, to be able to be successful, whatever success looks like for that person, that team, that business. And you're certainly doing some great work to helping people support. Please don't worry if you didn't grab that internet link. We'll have all of Tom's details, so you can connect with him on LinkedIn or go to the website, order the book, or can we pre-order as well, Tom?
I don't know. That's a good question. That's a good question for our book publisher.
Yeah, you'll have to now get them to do a pre-order link, won't you? Because then that'll help spread the word and raise the excitement. But look, it's been absolutely fascinating to talk to you over today and the last 2 episodes. I feel like we've covered an awful lot of topics. But as you said a couple of times, we could spend 20 hours just digging into one little portion of that, and there's not enough hours in the game of leadership day, shall we say. But certainly, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your insights, and your ideas with us at Game of Leadership. It's been a real pleasure to chat to you.
Yeah, thank you, Paula. I appreciate the time, and it's just been a lot of fun having this conversation. You can tell I've got a lot of passion for what we do, and so I just always have fun talking about it, and hopefully it's helpful to all the listeners out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And every one of them will take something different from it, whether they've honed in on the belief, the passion, the purpose, the courage, the culture. There's plenty in there that we've sort of dug into over the last few weeks. So thank you again, Tom. Wish you every success with the book, and I'll be certainly looking out for it on Amazon in the UK as well.
Great. Thanks, Paul, again.
Take care. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. This has been the third episode and final episode for a little while anyway, with our guest, who shared their pivotal moments that make them the leader they are today. Again, I talk about uniqueness a lot. Every guest story and their pivotal moments, the challenges they faced, the issues they faced over the years to get to where they are now, and how they pulled themselves through all of that, makes them the leader they are today, and each one of those stories is unique and different. It's been an absolute pleasure to chat with them and see what that meant for them. Now, once again, it's your turn to reflect on what you've heard today, see what resonates for you, and think about what that might mean for your leadership moving forwards. I'm Paula Eddie Wilcox, and I look forward to welcoming you back next time on Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. Bye for now.